Okay, I'm back. Let's pick up where we started at the slide about Athena and Prometheus bestowing reason and understanding on mankind. Notice it's not Zeus. Zeus presents himself as the father of mankind, but it's Prometheus and Athena who made us what we are in a very real sense. So, okay, coming back to this slide. So here is a later European painting of that moment where the sort of pale, the pale human is given the gift of reason and understanding. We become rational. And this is a gift from the gods, right? Our power of reasoning. It's what makes us godlike for the Greeks. And Odysseus, right? He really embodies that, his cunning. He's a good reasoner. Remember in book 4, Helen and Menelaus tell the story of Odysseus's Trojan horse, right? It's a really nice retelling of that story. And they have different versions of the story, right? From Helen tells the story as though she was trying to help the Greeks defeat the Trojans so she could return home to Menelaus. This is in book 4 of Homer's Odyssey. But then Menelaus is like, nice story, Helen. Then he tells the story about how Helen was actually trying to disrupt and distract the Greeks, right, by calling out their names in a beautiful voice. She kind of was throwing her voice to make it sound like the voices of their wives as they were inside the horse, trying to get them to speak and to reveal themselves so that the Trojans would know that the horse was full of Greek warriors. But Odysseus, inside the horse, right, made sure that his men did not respond to Helen's voices that she was throwing. So that's Menelaus's version of the story. Helen has her own version of the story. We see the husband and the wife, okay, they're back together, but there's a tension there, there's a friction, okay, and that's a really interesting moment, I think, in Homer's poetry, where we see what it's like for the husband and wife to be reunited, right? He blames her for a lot of things, but he's willing to compromise and kind of bring her home. She has her own power. She's a very independent, powerful woman, and he has to kind of try to balance that, right? But that's interesting, right? Interesting moment where the husband and the wife have a very different story to tell about what really happened when Odysseus brought the Trojan horse into the gates of Troy. Okay, but Odysseus is known for his reason, his understanding, his cunning, and this is the quality of mankind that Athena is responsible for with Prometheus's help, and it's why Athena loves Odysseus so. He is the most rational of all the humans that she knows. Okay, now the gift that Prometheus gives to mankind with Athena's assistance, Zeus is angered by that. So Zeus decides to punish mankind by giving his own gift. So there's two parts to the punishment. One is Zeus's gift to us, and secondly, Zeus directly punishes Prometheus, which is what we see in chapter 2 of Miller's novel. But the gift to mankind is Pandora, right? A woman. And he gives her not to mankind, but actually to Epimetheus, right? The brother of Prometheus, afterthought. And he takes Pandora and does not ask any questions, right? He brings her to human beings. He brings her into civilization. He falls in love with her, but he also kind of introduces her to human beings. And so Pandora, right, enters human society as a result of Zeus's gift to the brother of Prometheus, Epithymus. And Zeus knows that Epithymus will not realize what's happening, right? So what's happening is that Pandora has a box, and inside the box are all of these horrible diseases, and all of the causes of human misery are contained inside the box. And so once the box is opened, all of these pestilences and causes of human misery enter human life, right? Enter human civilization. So it's kind of the end of paradise here, in some ways. Now, of course, she closes the box, or the box is closed before hope gets out, right? And so hope, we still have hope. We haven't lost hope. So Pandora does bring hope to mankind, and Zeus, in some sense, gives that to us. He gives us all of the causes of misery in the form of, right, Pandora and her box, but he also gives us hope. Okay, so that's Zeus's response to Prometheus's decision to steal fire and give it to us. He gives us Pandora and her box in return, and he asks Hephaestus, who is the god of metallurgy, basically, to make chains to bind Prometheus. So here is Hephaestus binding Prometheus. Hephaestus is famously lame. He's got a gimpy leg because he was thrown out of a window, I believe by his mother. And he is married to Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. Right? So Aphrodite is married to Hephaestus, the kind of lame metallurgist, the gimpy metallurgist. Interesting story. Here we have Hermes there, the god of the messenger god, carrying his staff and his little wings on his helmet. He has wings on his shoes. He flies very fast. Actually, that might be that might be Apollo. I'm not positive who that is. I should find out. But that's Hephaestus, and there is Prometheus. And this is the beginning of his punishment, Zeus's punishment. So Hephaestus binds him and then brings him, in the story that you read from Miller's Circe, brings him to the house of the Titans, where he is whipped by the Fury. And remember, on page 17 of Miller's novel, right? We have Miller, the punishment of a god was a rare and terrible thing, and talk ran wild through our halls, right? Through the halls of her father, Helios. Prometheus could not be killed, but there were many hellish torments that could take death's place. Would it be knives or swords or limbs torn off, red-hot spikes or a wheel of fire? The naiads swooned into each other's laps. Everyone is gathering to find out how Zeus is going to punish Prometheus, right? The first act is the binding with the chains. The river lords postured, faces dark with excitement. You cannot know how frightened gods are of pain. This is what gods are afraid of, pain. Because they don't experience it very often. There is nothing more foreign to them. And so nothing they ache more deeply to see, right? This is interesting. They're just like us, right? The thing that we're, least likely to experience, right, is the thing that we most want to watch when we have a chance to. Right? We don't want to sort of fear of missing out. Gods have FOMO too, right? They don't want to miss out on Prometheus's pain and suffering, right? Because they're probably never going to get to experience it themselves, and they're terrified of it. But that's the very thing that they kind of want to see. Because an interesting thing about human psychology, it shows up also in the psychology of the gods. And so, right, he's brought to the house of Helios. Zeus is not there. Okay, Zeus is not here to witness this part of Prometheus's punishment, but the Fury, right, the goddess of vengeance on page 18. Right, she dwells among the dead, and she brings about vengeance, literally. And she comes in the form of a woman with a whip, and she lashes Prometheus's back until it's raw. And that's the moment at which all of the gods become bored, right? They leave the room after watching the Fury whip him, and he doesn't cry out in pain, he doesn't say anything, he doesn't protest. But that's the moment at which, right, Circe takes pity on him. She's very young, and nobody pays much attention to her. So they all leave the room, and she's there. And she talks to him, Lord Prometheus, on page 20. And she offers to bring him nectar, and she offers to bring him something to drink that will ease the pain. She sees herself as someone who is there to ease the pain of Prometheus, who is in great pain. And he says, yes, I would be thankful for that. I would appreciate that. She brings the cup in to him and pours it for him because he's bound and he's been whipped and he can't really move. And he thanks her for her kindness, right? This is the moment where, right, all of the other gods have sort of reveled in the kind of voyeuristic pleasure of watching one of their own suffer. But she is the one who takes pity on him and performs an act of kindness, a small act of kindness, and he appreciates that. Okay, and he teaches her something. Right? They talk. What does he tell her? He tells her something about human beings. Right? She really wants to know, why did you do this? Because she learns, right, that he had confessed to what he'd done. Right? So this is on page 22. Right? She knows that he was punished because he helped human beings. Right? Okay, don't want to run out of time. And so she's curious about that, right? Why would you risk such great punishment just to help human beings? And she wants to know, what are mortals like? Well, he doesn't say a lot here. There's no single answer. Everyone is different. But they all share one thing, death. They're all going to die. And this is something gods don't understand, right? They have no understanding of death. He describes it this way. Their bodies crumble and pass into earth. Their souls turn to cold smoke and fly to the underworld. There they eat nothing and drink nothing and feel no warmth. Everything they reach for slips from their grasp. Compare that to Enkidu's dream of death in Gilgamesh, but it's a horrible vision, right? And it's one that the gods don't understand. But right, death is not, certainly the underworld is not represented here as a happy place. And a kind of eternal torture almost. Everything they reach for slips from their grasp, right? That says something about what humans are. They're always reaching, right? And in death, they can no longer grasp what they're reaching for. Right? The end of the search, the end of the journey. How do they bear it, right? That sounds awful, right? Well, they bear it as best they can. And then she turns to the question, like, is it true that you refused to beg for pardon? You didn't ask for Zeus's mercy, right? And you weren't caught in the act of stealing fire and giving it to mankind. You confessed to it, right? You told Zeus that this is what you did. And so you brought on your own punishment, right? Why would you do such a thing? That seems irrational. And he doesn't really give much of an explanation, but he does say that not every god need be the same. And this is something that occurs to her later in the text, on page 61, right? And so I don't want to run out of time here. Okay, so on page 61 of Miller's Circe, she's having a memory. This is the moment where after she has turned Glaucus into a god, and Glaucus falls in love with Scylla, right? And she ultimately turns Scylla into a monster, right, out of anger. But she thought Glaucus, this fisherman, would love her, and that, they couldn't be together because he was human and she was a goddess. So she turned him into a god so they could get married and be together. But then the moment he becomes a god, he abandons her. And so she's dealing with that. And she's reminded on page 61 of Prometheus, right? Not all gods need be the same. Think about that moment. What is she remembering? Why is she remembering Prometheus there? How long had it been since I'd thought of Prometheus? A vision of him rose before me now. Prometheus had not cried out as the blows fell, though he had grown so covered in blood that he'd looked for a statue dipped in gold. They would have relished a turn with the Fury's whip, right? The other gods would have taken the whip and whipped him and sort of participated in the punishment of Prometheus so they could watch him suffer more. But I was not like them. Not all gods are the same. There isn't sort of one mold that you have to fit into. You can be your own god or your own goddess, or you can be your own person. Right? That's what Prometheus taught her. And she's remembering it there. So this is, again, an example of the way in which Circe, and you can think of other ways in which Circe models herself on Prometheus. He is a kind of model for her. And the model, the first thing she sees is suffering, pain. And her response is to do something kind for him. And then she goes back to her room and she cuts herself because she wants to experience pain herself. This is the beginning of Circe's becoming, transformation, the beginning of her metamorphosis, of her transformation, okay? The experience of pain. All right, I'm going to pause here. We'll start up with the next video in a moment.